Juvelian is forcefully dragged away by her father. She cries out for her father, weeping and swearing that it wasn't her fault, wondering how everything could have ended in such a tragic way. Her father grabs her by the arm, dragging her across the royal hall. Juvelian tries to call out to him, but he does not even look at her. A short while earlier, screams echoed through the hall, accusing that the princess's drink had been poisoned. Juvelian, trembling and in shock, is harshly confronted by Mikkel, the son of Marquis Hexen, who accuses her of murdering his beloved. Juvelian tries to defend herself, explaining that the princess only said she was thirsty and she was just trying to help, but Mikkel cuts her off, demanding an end to that charade. Mikkel throws it in Juvelian's face that she acted out of pure revenge for being rejected by him in favor of her highness. In the wake of the scandal, the surrounding nobles begin to whisper malicious gossip, commenting that Juvelian is exactly the kind of envious person who would do something like that. Rumors spread that she never got over the breakup with Mikkel and began to harass and stalk any woman who tried to get close to him. Juvelian clutches the hem of her dress in frustration and internally admits that she hated the princess for stealing Mikkel, but she swears she would never wish death upon anyone. It is at that moment that footsteps announce the arrival of her father, Duke Floyan. Later, the king immediately orders Juvelian to be locked in the dungeon for the crime committed. Juvelian cries and tries to defend herself, asking if her father trusts her. The duke, however, slaps his daughter's hand away, forcing her to step back from him. He turns to the king and tells him to follow him. The king asserts that she could very well be plotting something treacherous and suggests an even worse fate, locking her in the dreaded shadow chamber. The shadow chamber is an isolated place from which no one returns, where neither magic nor sword aura works, being a destination reserved strictly for criminals convicted of high treason. Upon realizing that her own father is suggesting sending her there, Juvelian faces a heartbreaking reality. It means he has completely given up on her and abandoned her. The magical prison opens, and as she is pushed inside the dark cell, Juvelian curls up and reflects that, in truth, she is already used to rejection. She recalls her childhood, when she used to try to get close to her father because she missed him so much. But the Duke would simply shoo her away, telling her never to seek him out again for such trivial reasons. The painful memories continue. Juvelian remembers crying alone in the corners of the mansion and how he did not even attend her debutante ball. The abandonment at the most important moment of her youth was the confirmation she needed. Her father never loved her. Standing before Juvelian, the Duke pulls something out of his suit, an object that he hands over to her, a dagger. Horrified, she realizes her father's implicit intentions and wonders if he truly wants her to do this. She begs through her tears, crying out for him, but he simply turns his back. The bars close and Juvelian breaks down in tears, now alone, scared, cold. Outside the cell, the guards panic at the sudden and imposing arrival of the crown prince. Known for his ruthless cruelty and for killing even allies who displease him, the prince demands entry into the shadow chamber, a privilege granted only to the imperial family. When the guards try to argue that the emperor has not yet approved the interrogation, the prince replies that torture will work better and that the truth only comes out when the criminal is pushed to the brink of death. Juvelian falls into despair. The crown prince assures the guards that he will not kill her, only torture her. Hearing him approach and the creaking of the door, Juvelian panics. The girl then grabs the dagger left by her father as the prince approaches and enters the cell. She becomes completely consumed by fear. She raises the blade in her hands, pointing it at herself. Juvelian laments having been seen only as the sole stain on Duke Floyan's honor, an outcast abandoned by everyone when all she ever wanted in life was to be loved. With one strike, she drives the blade into herself and there she falls, her blood bathing the floor. Suddenly, Juvelian finds herself holding a teacup. Mikkel then appears there and asks what she wanted to talk to him about. Juvelian says he is 3 hours late, however, she remembers perfectly what had happened, or rather, what was still going to happen. For, at that exact moment, she had reincarnated into Juvelian's body. Knowing perfectly well the terrible future that awaits her if she continues to tread the story's original path, Juvelian decides to change her destiny immediately. Without hesitating, she goes straight to the point and decrees, "I want to break up with you." Damn, I wasn't expecting that one. Mikkel stands frozen for a moment. Then, he says how ridiculous that is. He claims she is lying just to get attention, considering it impossible that the young woman would truly want to distance herself from him. Juvelian understands Mikkel's disbelief. Before reincarnating into the book, she was just an ordinary young woman on Earth looking for a job, who ended up dying in a car accident on her way to work. She was reborn as the villainous Juvelian, but only fully recovered the memories of her past life 4 days ago. She acknowledges that, before regaining consciousness, she followed the original script to a shameful fault. She used her father's status to threaten, humiliate, and physically assault any woman, even those of lower rank, who tried to get close to her beloved. She recalls the reason for such obsession. During her childhood, neglected by her own father and feeling completely alone in the world, Mikkel was the first person to reach out to her and show a glimpse of kindness. Starving for affection, she clung to every single crumb of his attention and became a possessive stalker. However, knowing that this obsession would pave her direct path to death, Juvelian sees that she needs to protect herself and break this cycle. Juvelian repeats that she is serious and that she wants to set him free. She adds that he has every right not to believe her, but her decision is made. Irritated and wounded in his pride, Mikkel accepts the breakup, turns his back, and warns her never to dare show her face in front of him again. Juvelian, however, laughs, and so she apologizes to him for everything she had done, saying she hopes he finds happiness. The young man is left stunned. The lady then walks away calmly, while Mikkel tries to convince himself that this is just a little act of hers to get more attention. But he is left confused and bothered by a strong feeling of bitterness that sprouted in his chest. Upon arriving at the Floyan mansion, Juvelian feels a massive weight lifting off her shoulders and plans to go straight to her room to rest. In the hallway, she bumps right into her father, Duke Legis Adre Floyan. She observes him and notes his striking features. He is the Empire's sole swordmaster, and due to his superhuman powers, he doesn't even appear to age. Despite her father's imposing presence, Juvelian remembers the greatest truth about him. Legis is a cold man who does not love his own daughter, and who, in the future, would hand her a dagger to kill herself. Determined to stop begging for affection, Juvelian changes her survival strategy. She will give up on her father's love and focus strictly on enjoying his money and fortune. Her new life goal is simple: live a long, wealthy, and peaceful existence. She greets him. The Duke does not say a single word, exactly as she expected. Thus, she attempts to excuse herself. Surprising the young woman, the Duke breaks the silence and comments that she came home early today, asking if there was no training. Juvelian hesitates for a second, unsure if he is actually striking up a conversation with her. Juvelian realizes her father is right. In the past, she would be far too busy chasing Mikkel to come home at this hour. She responds evasively, and the Duke furrows his brow, asking the reason for the change. Juvelian decides to lay her cards on the table and explains she realized Mikkel does not love her, and that she doesn't want to spend the rest of her life alongside someone who does not like her. The Duke does not seem to like that. He planned to make Mikkel his son-in-law and political successor, since she is an only child. To make it clear that she will not accept an unhappy arranged marriage, she firmly points out that she wants to marry someone who truly loves her, as her desire is to be happy. Duke Legis merely sighs and walks away without saying anything else. Juvelian interprets this attitude as the classic disdain of a father who doesn't want to waste time talking to a foolish daughter and who would abandon her without hesitation. She accepts this well in hopes he continues to ignore her as he always did, allowing her to live in peace and quiet in her own corner. Meanwhile, in the mansion's staff quarters, the maids are trembling and terrified. They comment that the only person capable of controlling Juvelian's outbursts, Mikkel, is now out of the picture. Knowing that their mistress has a violent temper and usually breaks everything in sight when she is angry, they imagine her room must be completely destroyed after the breakup. The maid Marilyn approaches the room with the bath preparations and knocks timidly on the door. Upon entering, She catches Juvelian with her head down and tears streaming down her face. Marilyn panics, thinking her mistress is suffering deeply from a broken heart, and tries to step closer. In reality, Juvelian's tears are nothing more than a physical reflex caused by a massive yawn of sleepiness. Noticing Marilyn's despair and look of pure pity, Juvelian feels extremely embarrassed for opening her mouth so wide in front of the employee. She tries to cover up the situation by simply saying she is very tired and prefers to take a bath the next day. Marilyn, thinking the lady is depressed over the breakup, accepts the order with eyes full of tears and apologizes before leaving. Juvelian is left confused by the maid's sudden crying and decides she needs to start treating the staff better to avoid misunderstandings. Outside, Marilyn wipes her own tears, completely moved. She goes over to the other maids and spreads the rumor that the pain of the breakup was too much for Juvelian to bear, to the point of making her cry. With that, Juvelian's father appears right there, asking if she was truly crying. And so, he asks the maid to tell him everything she knows. This just got way more interesting. Wait a minute. You've watched this far and still haven't liked or subscribed? Come on, my dear, give me a hand. Like and subscribe to win a cookie. Juvelian wakes up excited, feeling that it will be a good day. However, her joy is short-lived. The maid Marilyn enters the room and announces that the Duke has summoned her to have breakfast with him. The news brings an air of strangeness, since her father never had the habit of sharing meals with her. At the table, Juvelian eats with a grumpy face. The silence is awkward. She can barely swallow her food under the fixed, piercing gaze of Duke Legges. Nervous about this unprecedented situation, she pokes at her food while her father piles more items onto her plate and dryly commands, "Eat." The Duke recalls Marilyn's report about the breakup with Mikkel Hessen being a massive shock to Juvelian, causing her to cry the previous night. At the same time, Juvelian holds an internal monologue, judging herself to be pathetic. She compares her own mediocrity to her father's grandeur. Duke Legges is the highest-ranking noble in the Empire, leader of the Central Army and the Imperial Order of Knights, as well as the greatest national hero who led the victory in the war 20 years ago. While he is a demigod, she sees herself as an antisocial outcast, friendless, and the laughingstock of the nobility due to her old obsession with Mikkel. The silence is broken when Duke Legges asks directly, "Juvelian, what do you look for in a man?" The young woman chokes on the question, and the utensils slip from her hands. She panics, suspecting that her father, who never cared about her before, is already trying to find a replacement for Mikkel to secure a son-in-law to serve as his political successor. To avoid an unwanted arranged engagement, Juvelian devises a strategy. She will pretend she desires an impossibly perfect man so that no candidate will measure up, without angering her father. She considers saying she wants someone stronger than the Duke himself, but she knows such a man does not exist in the world, since Legges is the most powerful warrior in the Empire. Juvelian responds with a nervous smile, listing her demands. The suitor must have wealth, honor, family status, looks, and skills, all at the highest possible level. If he does not possess all of these, she states she would prefer not to marry at all. The Duke simply processes the information and says, "I appreciate it." Relieved to think her plan worked, Juvelian is caught off guard when Legges tacks on a new order. "Let us go for a stroll together." Juvelian freezes. In all her 18 years of life, her father has never taken her out for a stroll. Without understanding his true intentions, she accepts the invitation, gripped by a mix of nervousness and confusion. Haha, he changed overnight completely out of nowhere. I'm curious. They arrive at the bustling Arcade Street, a commercial hub for luxury goods and fabrics. The walk turns into a bizarre experience for Juvelian. Every time she stops and stares at a product or fabric, commenting mentally on its quality or high price, Duke Legges simply points and orders his assistant kneel. This one, that one, and all of those as well. Juvelian begins to feel exhausted and bothered by her father's unpredictable behavior, wishing only to return home and rest. Man, what happened to the Duke? Did he develop paternal love out of nowhere? Along the way, they cross paths with an unusual figure, a woman carrying a sword. Juvelian is intrigued, remembering that since the disappearance of Captain Yulia from the former Empress's guard, it was believed that no female knights remained in the Empire. The Duke orders Juvelian to wait there and goes to speak with the swordswoman in private. Legiz's presence draws the attention of passers-by, who begin to whisper about his identity and look askance at Juvelian, recognizing her as the Duke's infamous daughter. Uncomfortable with the gossip, Juvelian decides to hide in the nearest establishment. She rushes inside a shop without looking at the storefront. The shopkeeper welcomes her with flattery, praising her angel-like beauty and exceptional taste. Juvelian feels embarrassed, knowing she only went in there to escape the stares from the street and has no intention of buying anything. However, she bumps into someone while stepping backward. A mysterious man in a cloak appears by her side, asking the price of something. Looking up at him, Juvelian immediately notices his striking red eyes. The man realizes he is being watched and glares right back at Juvelian. Before she can avert her gaze or apologize for the trouble, he spits out the words with pure aggression. "What the hell are you looking at? Beat it." "I just thought of a theory. We already know he is the crazy prince who likes to torture, right? But what if that was just a rumor too? What if, in reality, he was trying to save Juvelian before? Man, this story is getting more and more interesting. I'm loving it." Internally, Juvelian admits she was only looking at him because she found him very attractive, with his sharp nose and intense eyes. Even so, she is indignant at his rudeness. The man decides to ignore her and tosses a coin onto the counter, being informed by the shopkeeper that the price is 10 silver coins. To annoy him and get even, Juvelian steps in and lies, claiming that the product he is about to buy is exactly what she was looking for. The shopkeeper, surprised, asks if she is sure, revealing that the item in question is actually armor polish. Juvelian is shocked by her own mistake, but tries to cover it up by saying she hates it when her accessories lose their shine. The merchant gets excited by Juvelian's excuse and says she will need much more than just one bottle if she wants to polish everything in her mansion, rushing to the back room to check the available stock. Juvelian wonders why on earth she got herself into such a ridiculous situation, while the red-eyed man just watches her. The man then takes what he bought and leaves. Juvelian calls out to him, warning that he forgot his change since he had paid with a gold coin. The man pays no attention and keeps walking. Indignant, she runs after him trying to warn him, but he stops out of nowhere and she bumps right into him. Juvelian explains that 1 gold coin is enough money to support an ordinary family for 2 weeks, and that such an amount would buy 10 bottles of armor polish. Suddenly, the shopkeeper returns smiling, celebrating that by great luck, they have exactly 10 polishes left in stock. Juvelian tries to refuse, saying she doesn't need that many, but the merchant insists that she shouldn't be shy. While she gets tangled up in her own lie, the mysterious man simply walks away. In another location, we see a subordinate receiving the mysterious man. He reports that he has already passed along the date of his visit to Duke Floyan. The man nods, but finds himself distracted, recalling Juvelian's words about the value of gold to commoners. His subordinate notices the distraction and asks if there is something wrong, but he replies that it is nothing. Meanwhile, Juvelian tries to explain why on earth she bought 10 bottles of armor polish while the Duke watches her, intrigued. She thinks about the mysterious man and how she didn't even notice him leaving. Juvelian goes back to walking alongside her father, thinking about how long the day has been. Her feet even throb with the exhaustion of the walk. She reminds herself that she needs to hold on tight and not displease her father if she wants to keep living comfortably off his fortune in the future. However, physical exhaustion makes her falter, and she loses her balance on the steps. Before she falls, Duke Legiz moves with superhuman speed and catches her in his arms. Juvelian apologizes for her carelessness, mentally blaming her exhaustion for not watching where she was going. To her utter surprise, the Duke lifts her up into his arms. The Duke says it is best to return to the carriage. Juvelian says she is fine, but the Duke cuts her off and carries her the rest of the way, leaving everyone around them admiring his action. This is while Juvelian wonders what happened to him, after all. While being carried toward the carriage, Juvelian tries to decipher her father's contradictory behavior. She asks him to put her down and says they can go back to shopping, but the Duke is pragmatic and determined to return home. Suddenly, the girl begins to feel strange. While her father says he will find someone she likes, and that, since her opinion matters, Juvelian begins to lose consciousness. The Duke finds it odd and asks if she is all right, despite her saying that he doesn't need to worry about her. The Duke looks completely incredulous. Juvelian faints in his arms. Legis panics upon seeing his daughter lose consciousness, remembering in despair a similar episode from the past. This was not the first time. Back home, the Duke begs Juvelian not to leave him, even calling her by her childhood nickname, Juvel. Juvelian begins to regain consciousness. She finds it very strange to hear that affectionate name and wonders why her father seems to be crying, as she deems it impossible for him to act that way. Suddenly, Juvelian wakes up feeling a sharp headache and breathing heavily, concluding that she had a very bizarre dream. The family doctor expresses how worried he was during the period the young woman wouldn't wake up, reporting that everyone was intensely demanding explanations from him. Juvelian realizes she had fainted, and upon asking about the time that had passed, the doctor reveals she spent 4 whole days asleep. Startled, Marilyn and the other servants surround the young woman, celebrating her recovery. Juvelian notices a large quantity of flowers and get well letters in her room and questions the meaning of it all. Marilyn explains that all the ladies from the most prominent noble families sent those gifts and messages. Internally, Juvelian is suspicious of the situation. Knowing that her personal trait is having no true friends, she concludes that all of it must be out of self-interest. Duke Legis enters the quarters. Juvelian is surprised. He then gently touches her forehead, seeing that she is already feeling better. The girl truly wonders if this is still a dream. Then the Duke turns and leaves, telling her to rest a bit more. Seeing him depart immediately, Juvelian reaffirms to herself that he is a cold-hearted father who shows no real concern for his sick daughter. Reflecting on what happened, Juvelian realizes that all the flowers and letters were sent solely because of her father's reputation and surname, and that none of those people actually care about her well-being. She acknowledges that she is nothing without the Duke's influence and money. Marilyn asks if her mistress is really going to reply to all the letters received. Juvelian confirms her intention, claiming that if they went to the trouble of sending them out of concern, the polite thing to do is to reply personally. Her real objective with this is to take the first step toward rebuilding her image before society, reversing the terrible reputation left by her previous misdeeds. Thus, Juvelian focuses on her writing and other studies, leaving the maids perplexed. Knowing that her father will not pass the ducal title to her, the young woman decides she needs to learn how to manage the decent amount of money she will receive as an inheritance. With this focus, she kicks off her practical plans to become completely independent of her father. I agree, studying can be pretty boring, but that's life. She recognizes that the exhaustion is the price for having neglected her studies for so long. Feeling 10 years older due to the mental effort, she forces herself to stay firm in her purpose of seeking independence. When she enters the library, she bumps right into her father, looking completely elegant. She gets a start upon finding the Duke. She tries to greet him by wishing him a good morning, but her father reprimands her immediately, pointing out that it is already late afternoon and not morning. Embarrassed by being called out at the very first moment of their encounter, she admits her mistake and says she was mistaken. The Duke stares at his daughter with a fixed, judging look. Upon noticing that she is holding a book on territory management, she thinks his expression seems to question why a fool would be reading that. Juvelian notices the reaction and hurries to explain that she was just curious to understand the duties and work a lord performs. Legis asks why she wants to know about that, making Juvelian fear he suspects some ambition of hers over the lands. She energetically reinforces that it is just out of pure curiosity, without any ulterior motive. The Duke orders her to sit down. She remembers the doctor told her to avoid stress and keep relaxed, but her father's comment does the complete opposite. Legis decides to test his daughter and asks if she knows what the 3 elements that constitute a fiefdom are. Juvelian answers in detail, listing the foundation of the land along with public order, the lord as the great protector, and the subjects in charge of production. The Duke acknowledges her correct answer and says it is very good. Next, he extends the test by asking a new question. An hour passes since the start of the surprise quiz. Juvelian falls into despair, not understanding why the conversation turned into a long and complex interrogation about administration. 2 hours later, she continues to suffer through the questions, begging for it to end, until the butler interrupts the test by announcing that the Duke's guest has just arrived. Relieved, the young woman celebrates her freedom. Avoiding any eye contact with her father, Juvelian goes back to reading. The Duke, however, smiles at this and asks her to read another one. Juvelian falls into despair upon seeing that the book is about military strategy and tactics. Time passes, and meanwhile, Juvelian is still there, buried in books, seeing that she still needs to read 3 additional volumes and cannot disobey a direct gift and order from her father. When she handles one of the books, she notices a strange gleam. A pendant, perhaps forgotten there. She picks up the object and walks toward the study with the intention of returning it to her father or the visitor. As she approaches the door, she hesitates upon overhearing an argument coming from inside. Someone says to stop trying to convince him and to mind their own business. We see that it is none other than the red-eyed man. That is when, suddenly, she hears the Duke say the name Max. Max, the crown prince of the realm. Juvelian tries to figure out who the man is that her father calls by his first name, Max. Observing that he does not look like a knight and wondering if he might be a mercenary, she gets a start when he turns in her direction. Juvelian retreats quickly, noting that he looks very much like the mysterious young man from the shop. Inside, Duke Legis asserts that a blade should be used to protect precious people, not just to kill, pointing out that the young man forgot this basic principle. Max fires back, calling the Duke master and questioning the point of possessing a weakness like that. Juvelian, listening to everything, is surprised to discover that her father has a student. Legis continues his explanation, saying that people become stronger precisely to protect their weaknesses. Max thinks that is complete nonsense and says goodbye, stating he is busy. Juvelian finds his behavior incredibly rude. Before the young man leaves, the Duke says that one day he will find someone he will want to protect. Juvelian wonders if her father truly ever had someone precious like that, remembering with bitterness that he let her die in the original story. Max says he knows nothing about wanting to protect someone, but claims to have found a rat. Juvelian panics, thinking it is an actual rat. Max draws his sword and offers to eliminate the intruder, but Duke Legis immediately forbids him. Juvelian wonders why on earth her father won't let Max kill the rat. The Duke warns Max not to lay a single finger on it, threatening to show no mercy if he dares touch it. Scared and pricing her life, Juvelian decides to walk away with quick steps, resolving to return the forgotten pendant at another time. Alone, the Duke questions whether Max will continue to call Juvelian that way, even knowing who she is. Max makes the excuse that it was too dark to tell. In his thoughts, Max sees that there is only one person in the world capable of making him so sensitive. The young man recalls the last 10 years in which he began training with the Duke, and how he learned just how rigid and implacable that man is. He remembers that the only time he saw his master lower his guard was when pronouncing the name Juvel, Legis's daughter. Max clenches his fists and swears to himself that he will never end up like Legis, refusing to put a collar around his own neck because of another person. Thus, he turns around and leaves. Legis remembers Max's past. The former empress, trembling in her bed, begs Legis to protect that child until he can look after himself, commanding young Max to survive. At the empress's funeral, the people around whispered, calling the deceased a weak woman and saying the prince was now like a wingless bird. Faced with young Max's fury, Legis says he understands his anger because he has already gone through the same thing, explaining that that child was the sole reason he kept living without turning into a monster, foreseeing that Max would also find someone special in the future. At the mansion, Juvelian talks to Marilyn about the rats. Worried about the size of the house and the possibility of the animals multiplying, she states she will speak with the butler to resolve the problem immediately. Later, Legis observes his daughter and realizes she took the conversation with Max completely literally. Knowing that no actual rodents exist there, the Duke calls his assistant Derek and asks where rats are usually found. Derek is confused by the question, but the Duke brushes it off and changes the subject, questioning the progress of the list of suitors for Juvelian. The assistant reports that the gathering of information based on family, appearance, wealth, and reputation will be completed later today. Next, Derek mentions that Mikkel Hessen has been looking for them. Duke Legges shows deep irritation upon hearing the young man's name, questioning what that bastard wants. Man, this just keeps getting better and better. Legges actually loves Juvelian very much, so what happened there at the beginning? And as for Max, Mano, there are so many plots, I'm loving it, ha. Derek reveals that Mikkel keeps pressuring Juvelian for a reply. He explains that the young man views her disappearance as a desperate cry for attention, and because of this, writes in a tone of extreme superiority and disdain. In light of this report, Duke Legges orders that no letters from Mikkel reach Juvelian. He demands that the assistant himself intercept them all, and the exact moment those envelopes cross the mansion's gates, they are to be burned. Meanwhile, in the mansion's garden, the maids celebrate joyfully, announcing that the rat has finally been caught in the trap. They conclude it was just a solitary intruder that got in by chance, which allows Juvelian to finally relax and decide to head back inside. That is when Marilyn approaches, carrying a new stack of mail addressed to her mistress. Juvelian examines the papers and is surprised to find an envelope coming directly from Count Arlo's house. Upon opening it, she discovers an invitation to Rose Mary Arlo's 17th birthday party, scheduled for the 6th of that month. Juvelian recalls that, in the future of the original story, Rose becomes one of the princess's closest confidants and one of the main people responsible for her ruin. She notes that, for now, the two of them are not yet on bad terms. With 3 weeks left until the event, Juvelian decides to take action to avoid her tragic fate. Clapping her hands lightly, she instructs Marilyn to bring some fresh flowers from the garden and orders Sella to provide decorative lace and ribbons, not forgetting to ask for a piece of cake to go with it. She reflects that pursuing financial independence is great, but fixing her death flag before society is equally urgent. At the Arlo residence, young Rose merry beams with joy upon opening Juvelian's mail. The envelope contains a handwritten reply, affectionately decorated with pressed flowers, in which Juvelian accepts the invitation and hopes her presence won't be a bother. Rose is enchanted and amazed to see that the influential Lady Floyan went to the trouble of decorating it personally for her. Rose confesses how much she idolized Juvelian in the past, remembering how she thought she looked like a perfect doll. She recalls a night when she tried to greet her timidly, but ended up being completely ignored by Juvelian, who walked right past her while chasing after Mikkel. Rose leaves the resentment behind, determined to reply to the note as quickly as possible, while her own maid begs in vain for her to behave in a more dignified manner. Back in her quarters, Juvelian receives Rose's reply. Reading the long, enthusiastic text, where the girl admits she loved the pressed flowers and tried to copy the idea, Juvelian lets out a laugh, finding the attitude adorable, even though the text is excessively long. Marilyn observes the scene and notes that her mistress seems genuinely happy debating what to write to the one who might be her first true friend in high society. The news about the letter spreads like wildfire among the young women of high society. At a gathering of nobles, the ladies comment in astonishment that Juvelian seems to have finally matured, since the formerly snobbish girl accepted a common invitation instead of simply ignoring it as usual, given that she used to only attend imperial banquets. While some suspect an evil plot, others note with envy that letters decorated with flowers and ribbons have become the newest fashion sensation because of Juvelian. And all of this is overheard by Mikkel. Mikkel Hessen returns home. Upon being received by his staff, he immediately orders them to send a letter to Count Arlo, announcing that he has decided to attend the birthday party. He questions whether any mail has arrived for him and, upon receiving a negative answer, demands to be left alone. Mikkel grinds his teeth and throws his cup to the floor upon realizing that Juvelian ignored only his letter, convincing himself that she is doing this just to get his attention. Consumed by hatred, Mikkel swears he will get even. Juvelian walks along, reflecting on Lady Arlo's birthday. Aware of how much the young woman is looking forward to the date, she recognizes that she cannot choose just any random gift. The merchants around her are all left dumbfounded by what they see. That is when we see an entire battalion following the girl, by order of the Duke himself. Haha, I am loving this. She recalls her father's imposition, as he had forbidden her from going out unless she was accompanied by an escort knight. Bothered by the pressure of dragging a whole dozen soldiers through the streets, she laments, since all she wanted most was to live a quiet life. The girl stops in front of a rustic, weathered storefront. Sir Geraldine questions whether she is sure that is where she wants to go, commenting that the place looks closed. Juvelian asks him to show more respect in public and assures him she is at the correct address. Geraldine stares at the workshop next door, called the Greta Workshop, which is visibly larger and more imposing, and thinks that Juvelian's taste in shops is truly exotic. Upon entering, the environment proves to be bleak. The local artisan, Ian Feodora, appears with his head down and apologizes, confessing that he is in no condition to produce anything in his current state. He suggests that the nobles visit the neighboring establishment instead. Geraldine agrees and suggests that Juvelian look elsewhere, but the young woman ignores him. She steps closer and says she wishes to commission a piece specifically from Ian. The young man is dazzled by the sight of Juvelian, who resembles an angel. And gosh, she is so beautiful, you guys. The young man blushes and asks them to leave, reinforcing that he is unable to work. Juvelian asserts that she believes in him and knows he will do a much better job than any other professional. She smiles and declares that he will become the best artisan in the entire empire. Ian is deeply moved by her words, seeing her as an angel once again. He even sheds a tear and covers it up by saying some dust got in his eye. Juvelian recalls that, in the original story, Ian lived in a terrible slump due to the pressure of inheriting the family business. However, 6 months from now, the necklace he will create for the princess's coming-of-age ceremony will transform high society and establish him as a genius. Juvelian celebrates the fact that she secured the backing of a promising talent before his market value skyrocketed. Regaining his posture, Ian asks what kind of item she would like to have crafted. At the Floyan mansion, the assistant Derek delivers the final list of suitable suitors for Juvelian to Duke Legis. Upon examining the papers, the Duke's face darkens immediately as he notices the name Maximilian Kasha. He circles the name and orders Derek to remove it from the list immediately. Before he can give further instructions, a knock on the door interrupts the conversation. A staff member announces that a messenger from the Emperor demands the Duke's urgent presence at the Imperial Palace. Far from there, free from the excessive escort, and having left the simple project with the artisan, Juvelian decides to do some personal shopping. Something she couldn't do last time because she felt watched by her father. Upon entering a shop, her eyes light up as she finds a very beautiful and well-crafted pair of cufflinks. Thinking that the item would look great on Duke Legis, she decides to buy it, concluding that giving the accessory as a gift, along with the pendant she found in the library, will make her father feel less angry with her for the delay in returning it. Haha, I love Juvelian. As she prepares to pay, a voice echoes behind her, calling her by her title. Juvelian turns around with a start and recognizes Radian Droyle, Mikkel's cousin on his mother's side, and known in high society as the leader of a malicious gossip circle. Juvelian replies to the greeting politely, but mentally criticizes his lack of etiquette in approaching her that way. Radian smiles and asks her to keep calling him by his first name, calling her his fair lady. Juvelian remains silent, realizing that his provocations are only meant to draw an aggressive reaction from her. Maintaining her composure, Juvelian says she would love to chat but asks to be excused, claiming she has an appointment. Radian mocks her, asking if something is wrong, and insinuates that she is running away. But the young woman simply says goodbye, turns her back, and takes the jewelry she bought. This, however, catches Radian's attention. Outside, Radian watches her departure with a malicious smile. He notices the purchased package and laughs to himself, noting that just a few days after ending her relationship with Mikkel, Juvelian is buying men's cufflinks. Oh no, I can already foresee where this is going to end. And so, my dear friends, are you enjoying it? Remember to hype the video so we can reach more fans, okay? And to win a cookie, of course. Legis appears before the emperor. The sovereign claims that a rat has infiltrated his quarters and that he won't be able to sleep if the situation persists, ordering his most trusted servant to resolve the problem personally. The Duke accepts the order, understanding that an assassin is on the loose. The emperor recalls that the captured intruder committed suicide without leaving a single clue or physical evidence. He asks if he can trust that Legis will remain at the palace to conduct the investigations closely. The Duke confirms that he will spend a few days in the royal quarters, which draws a smile from the ruler. A very ugly smile, by the way. He states that he feels safe in Legis's presence. Outside, the knights under Legis's command question the decision, arguing that the investigation will keep him tied up there for a long time and that the hero of the empire should not submit himself to tasks of this nature. Legis tells them to shut their mouths to avoid unnecessary suspicion. Max, hidden in a tree, is disappointed that Legis allows himself to be used by the emperor through a weakness. Another knight approaches and reports to the Duke that the escort mission was completed, and that Juvelian seemed very excited shopping for Lady Rose's birthday party. Upon hearing this, Max reflects on the concept of family and questions if such a stupid bond is what makes someone precious. He remembers that he used to see his master as someone ruthless, but who completely changed his stance when thinking of his daughter. Max concludes with indignation that the emperor noticed this vulnerability and used it to put a collar on Legis, rejecting the logic that people become stronger to protect their weaknesses. Max decides he needs to see things with his own eyes to understand what makes his master so weak. At the Hessen family residence, Radian Droyle walks in without ceremony and sits down heavily across from Mikkel, complaining about his tired legs. Mikkel glares at him coldly and demands to know what he wants. Radian asks for tea and comments that he has great news, letting out an ironic sigh as he says it is no wonder Juvelian traded him for another man. Mikkel scowls and demands to know where his cousin heard such nonsense. Radian smiles and assures him that he saw with his own eyes Juvelian buying men's cufflinks as a gift. He emphasizes the meaning of the gesture, pointing out that the accessory denotes extreme intimacy and, between lovers, carries the implicit message of possession. Radian mocks the situation, saying that this should be good news for Mikkel, since he was so worried about the breakup. Faced with his cousin's heavy silence, Radian tries to ask the servant for tea, but is interrupted. Mikkel dryly orders his cousin to leave the place immediately. Radian gets up laughing and says goodbye, pretending to be sorry for ruining Mikkel's mood. Though he throws one last provocation by suggesting that the true culprit for Mikkel's bad mood isn't him. Alone and trembling with rage, Mikkel recalls Juvelian's passionate declarations from the past, when she used to say he was the only man she would ever love. He clenches his fists and punches one of the counters with such fury that his hands bleed, feeling humiliated that Juvelian has already found a replacement. The servant is startled to see the bleeding, but Mikkel ignores the pain and mentally swears to make Juvelian pay dearly for making a fool out of him. My God, things are getting pretty tense. At the Floyan mansion, Juvelian observes the room with a bundle of papers and notices the silence of the house, questioning if her father will be late again because of work. The maid informs her that the Duke sent word saying he won't be coming home for the next few days due to training. Marilyn watches her from afar and thinks the young woman looks very sad over her father's absence, even though she is actually more interested in getting rid of the pending matter. You can't fool me, Juvelian. You bought a present for him. Night falls and Juve falls asleep after reading some books. And while she sleeps, a mysterious figure slips into her room. Standing in the darkness, the man observes the sleeping young woman and considers her extremely weak and defenseless, thinking that anyone could attack her at any moment. He questions why Duke Legis is so obsessed with someone like that and disdains the idea of having a person to protect, seeing that he could easily break her like a twig. Everyone already knew it was Max, right? Right. He steps closer to try and touch her, but at that exact moment, She wakes up. Man, what a beautiful panel. Look at that magnificent art. Wow, gorgeous. The two stare at each other in the dark. Juvelian asserts that she does not know who he is, but suggests he got the wrong house, emphasizing that this is the residence of Duke Floyan. While she sits up sleepily, Max gets confused by her reaction, questioning why the young woman shows no fear in a situation like that and whether she might have a hidden card up her sleeve. Max, however, says he is in the right place. Juvelian fires back, saying he should think twice and that he will regret the break-in. Still sleepy, she begins to mumble, saying she still has at least a year of life left before her fatal destiny. But Max wonders what on earth she is talking about. With a strike, Juvelian lights a match. Max reacts with a start and thinks about her audacity in lighting a flame there, wondering if she fears nothing. When the light illuminates the room, Max loses himself in the brightness of her eyes for a moment. Man, Juvelian looks like an angel. Juvelian finally sees better and takes a step forward, curious, noting that he is her father's student, and also the very same man she bumped into at the armor polish shop. Feeling an immense wave of relief upon realizing he is not an actual assassin, she manages to calm herself down. Juvelian recalls the initial panic from when she opened her eyes and saw that dark silhouette, thinking it was a ghost or that she was in a nightmare. She reflects that the presence of a stranger in the dead of night could only mean a thief or an assassin hired because of her terrible reputation and past misdeeds. Desperate at the thought of the main villainess dying before the grand coming-of-age celebration, she had forced that brave front to claim he was in the wrong house. Ha ha ha, man, I love Juvelian. The young woman sits on the bed and lets out a deep sigh to relieve the scare, thinking how lucky it is that the intruder is just her father's disciple. She mentally notes that she needs to lock the windows better next time. Max calls out to her again, and Juvelian turns to him and asks him to stop being so rude, demanding manners, even if he is the Duke's student. Max fires back, asking why he should do that. Bothered by the young man's cynicism, Juvelian gets annoyed at having been frightened in the middle of the night and thinks the only reason she doesn't take drastic action is because he has a bond with her father. Knocks echo at the door, and a maid's voice asks if there is something wrong in the room. Juvelian hesitates, but at that very moment, she is startled to see the young man draw his sword and take her hostage. Max, careful Max, if the Duke finds out about this. The maid insists, asking if her mistress is doing well. Max glares threateningly at Juvelian, making it crystal clear that he wants her to send the staff away. Understanding the hint, the young woman replies that everything is fine and that she simply lost her sleep, deciding to read a bit. Actually, they were knights, okay. Satisfied with the explanation, they say goodnight and withdraw. Juvelian asks Max to lower his blade, since she did exactly what he wanted. Max asks if that is all she has to say, and she points out that he broke in without permission, but she is interrupted by a long yawn right in the middle of her sentence. Max is left incredulous at the sight of her yawning in a situation like that. Juvelian thinks that sleepiness just hit her incredibly hard out of nowhere. Max pulls the blade away from her and asks what on earth she thinks she is doing. Juvelian argues that he woke her up and now she is sleepy all over again, politely suggesting that the young man go back home. Max remains silent for a brief moment and replies dryly that he does not have a home. They stare at each other for a moment, completely frozen. Juvelian recalls her previous suspicions that he might be a mercenary. She asks if he just lives his life traveling. Imagining the routine of an ordinary mercenary, she visualizes a homeless, ragged, and worn-out figure. Juvelian erroneously concludes that the young man was kicked out of wherever he lived and came looking for his master out of a pure lack of options. Ha ha ha, man, I love Juvelian. She searches her memory and remembers that, during Max's last visit, there was no formal reception or servants to assist him, deducing that he wasn't an official guest. She assumes the young man got lost using one of the mansion's side entrances and ended up in her room by pure accident. Aware that her father is not home to receive him, she decides to make a practical decision. Juvelian announces that, if he has nowhere to go, he can stay there for a while. Max reacts in surprise, She explains that, in the Duke's absence, it is her duty to look after her father's guests. Leaving no room for argument, she stretches over, grabs some blankets, and tosses them right into Max's face. She says he doesn't need to thank her, and that he can return the favor when he is rich and famous. She lies down, wishing him a good night, and falls fast asleep. Max stares at the young woman and realizes she has truly fallen asleep, left completely flabbergasted by her attitude. He wonders what is wrong with this woman and why she doesn't show the slightest bit of fear in his presence. The young man reflects that everyone around him usually gets terrified in his presence or tries to flatter him to hide their panic. He recalls the brightness in Juvelian's eyes, thinking that, for an instant, her gaze seemed totally detached and indifferent to everything around her. Max shakes his head and decides not to overthink it, focusing on his original goal, eliminating Juvelian because he considers her an obstacle. He reaches his hand out toward her with the intent of putting an end to his master's weakness, believing that without this weak point, the Emperor would lose his leverage over Duke Legges, allowing them both to overthrow the monarch together, just as planned. Gosh, what a plot twist. However, remembering Juvelian's completely unconcerned expression when she saw him, Max hesitates. Seeing her lovely face while she sleeps, he sits down heavily right next to the bed and realizes that just watching her sleep is making him incredibly drowsy too. Max catches himself with a start at his own thought, reprimanding himself for feeling sleepy in a place like this. He recalls that on the battlefields where death lurked every single second, pulling all-nighters was the rule, and he never lowered his guard, even during moments of rest. Despite trying to fight off the exhaustion and repeating to himself that he cannot sleep there, Max seems to be completely hypnotized by Juvelian's sheer comfort. And just like that, he finally falls asleep. Oh my God, they are so cute. Juvelian is immersed in a vivid nightmare. In the dream, a colossal dragon spreads chaos, making everyone run and scream in terror while the ground explodes into flames. Juvelian runs desperately but trips and falls. Just as the creature lunges to attack her, Duke Legges emerges wielding his sword and roars furiously, swearing to kill the monster for daring to hurt his daughter. Man, absolutely cinema. Juvelian wakes up with a start, panting and her heart racing. She wipes the sweat from her face and reflects that it is very strange to have a dream about dragons, something that rarely happens, but dreaming about dragons is supposed to bring good luck, so today should be a very good day. Upon looking to the side, however, she freezes as she notices a certain someone lying right there. She jumps in fright. Max is sleeping heavily in her room, and worse, comfortably sprawled out on her own bed. Juvelian panics, completely unable to understand how the situation reached that point. Seeing him rest so deeply, she hesitates to wake him up abruptly. Consoling herself with the fact that nothing wrong happened, she considers pretending that he just borrowed the bed. Observing the young man's features, Juvelian recognizes that, despite being incredibly rude, he possesses stunning beauty, even questioning if he might be even more attractive than Mikkel. Right after, she visualizes a scandalous newspaper headline accusing the villainous Lady Floyan of kidnapping a handsome man. I love Juvelian man. Terrified by the possibility of being caught together, she decides she needs to wake him up immediately. Before she can touch him, Max's hand shoots out and grips Juvelian's wrist tightly, pulling it with all his might. The two end up on the floor, with Max asking what she thinks she is doing. Whoa. He ends up on top of her, and Juvelian hides her fear, ironically commenting that he seems to have had a great night's sleep, judging by his morning liveliness. Max releases her wrist with a start, realizing that he fell asleep, which he considers something completely impossible. Juvelian begins to glare at him with distaste, finding him tremendously ungrateful since she even allowed him to spend the night there. Irritated by the young man's audacity, invading her room, sleeping in her bed, and now acting rudely, she decides to set kindness aside. However, upon staring at his scowling face, Juvelian can't contain herself and bursts out laughing. Max glares at her, demanding to know the reason for her laughter. Juvelian finds it hilarious noticing how much his attitude resembles that of a grumpy feline. She remembers a cranky black cat she knew in her childhood, which would enter her room whenever it pleased, sleep in her bed, and on her pillow, always acting proud and moody whenever she tried to pet it. Laughing to herself at the comparison, she tries to apologize but confesses she can't stop laughing when she thinks of the animal. Marilene's voice echoes from the hallway, asking if her mistress is already awake. Juvelian snaps into alert, knowing she needs to calm down and act fast so the servants don't witness this scene. The girl then guides Max to the wardrobe and, with a sweet smile plastered on her face, tells him not to make a sound, as she doesn't want anyone to get the wrong idea about the situation. Max questions what those wrong conclusions would be. Trying to explain in simple terms, Juvelian compares it to the animal term of mating. Upon hearing the word, Max turns completely red and begins to yell in shock, but Juvelian covers his mouth immediately, desperate at the sound of the maid's footsteps outside. At which point the maid finds the noise rather strange and decides to just walk right into the room. Marilene tries to open the door, but finds that it is locked. Taking advantage of the brief pause, Juvelian whispers to Max that he doesn't want people getting the wrong ideas either, suggesting they cooperate to resolve the situation. The young man gives in and nods his head. Satisfied, Juvelian pats the top of his head, saying he should have just agreed from the very beginning. Max clenches his fists, incredulous and indignant at her audacity for touching him like that. The maid calls out again, and Juvelian answers that she is coming. Juvelian unlocks the door and attends to Marilene, apologizing for worrying her and explaining that she locked the entrance out of fear that someone might walk in by surprise. The maid finds it funny and comments that no one would be crazy enough to break into the Floyan mansion, a place even thieves avoid. Juvelian smiles, fully aware that the crazy intruder is right there. She argues that she prefers to be safe, especially since her father is not home. Marilene interprets her mistress's concern as homesickness and anxiety over Duke Legaz's absence. She tries to calm her down, reassuring her that the master will return soon and suggesting that Juvelian go out to get some fresh air. While chatting, the maid suddenly notices the young noblewoman's wrist and lets out a startled gasp at what she sees. Locked in the closet for 20 minutes, Max begins to lose himself in his thoughts and complains about Juvelian's delay. He questions what he is still doing there and evaluates her behavior as something completely nonsensical. Max reflects on how she laughed and acted with indifference when she should have been terrified, unable to decipher the young woman's reactions. "Ooh la la, are you falling in love, Max?" Suddenly, Max hears groans of pain coming from the bedroom. He hears Juvelian asking Marilene to massage a little further down. Initially, the young man snaps into alert, questioning what is going on. However, his mind ends up wandering to naughty thoughts, remembering what Juvelian had mentioned earlier. Marilene suggests calling a doctor, but Juvelian refuses, saying that an ointment will be enough. Max grumbles mentally, thinking she is making a drama out of nothing, until he hears the maid lamenting the amount of purple bruises scattered across her mistress's wrist and shoulder. Juvelian brushes it off, taking the blame by saying she was careless and fell out of bed. In the closet, Max realizes that he caused those injuries when he grabbed her firmly upon waking up. He feels uneasy about it but tries to push the feeling away, repeating to himself the law of the battlefield: the strong survive and the weak die. Just that, right, Max? The conversation in the bedroom finishes, and Juvelian approaches the closet. She then opens the door with a creak, letting Max be struck by the radiant light of her face as she lets him know he can finally come out. Look at that face Max is making. Upon seeing him step out, Juvelian smiles and asks if he is hungry. Max stares at her, confused, and questions the reason behind so much kindness. Quite simply, the young woman replies that food is much tastier when shared with someone and invites him to eat, praising the kitchen chef's talent. Faced with her invitation and her smile, Max's heart beats faster than usual. To the young guest's deep consternation, the offered meal consists solely of cucumber sandwiches. He enters a true internal conflict and trembles with revulsion, for he hates cucumbers more than anything else in the world. Jesus, man, who eats a cucumber sandwich? Noticing his obvious hesitation to touch the plate, Juvelian asks why he isn't eating. cornered and determined not to show weakness so he can carry out his original plan to get the hell out of there. Max forces himself to chew the food under her innocent, sparkling gaze. Juvelian's eyes light up as she asks if it tastes good. Max, however, swallows hard and nods his head, agreeing with her. This is all while wondering what on earth he is doing. Juvelian smiles as her eyes sparkle, saying she was worried Max wouldn't like the cucumbers. Her radiance, however, makes Max's heart falter. He remains silent and takes another bite of the vegan sandwich, seeing that maybe it isn't so bad after all. Moving to the imperial palace. The Prime Minister, Duke Elios, walks with firm steps through the corridors toward the throne room, reflecting on the court's latest rumors. The news that Duke Florian has taken up the post of the emperor's personal bodyguard has already spread. Elios assesses that persistence in this situation could turn the people against the crown, repeating the same mistakes of the past. Coming face to face with the monarch, the Prime Minister cuts straight to the chase and questions whether the intention is to keep Duke Florian in this role for long. The emperor responds with clear disdain and arrogance, stating that he will continue to utilize the nobleman, because for his goals, there is no hound more efficient and obedient than Legis. Ah, what a son of a. That's when we flash back to 20 years ago, at the height of the severe war between the Ashit Empire and the Kingdom of Tegeria. When the palatial lines of defense were on the verge of collapsing, the former emperor preferred to evacuate the premises in secret and flee to guarantee his own survival, abandoning his subjects to their own fate. Standard procedure. It was amidst that scenario of abandonment that the Knight Legisadre Florian took command of the armed forces and led the empire to a turnaround that secured victory. It is precisely thanks to this grand military feat that the current emperor was able to take the throne and preserve the crown in his possession. At that time, the public support shown by Legis for the monarch was enough to silence the conspiracies demanding his dethronement. Despite this, Duke Elios makes sure to remind the king that the commoners still view him as a coward due to his past flight, which keeps the imperial family's reputation tarnished before society. Elios seriously warns that demoting Duke Florian to minor surveillance tasks will only serve to fuel the people's resentment. He suggests it would be more profitable to focus efforts on discovering who hired the assassins threatening the court. Annoyed by the audacity of the criticism, the emperor loses his patience and orders the prime minister to leave immediately. Before leaving the room, Elios insists that prestige won in the present is much more valuable than past glories and advises the monarch to bring the crown prince back to court as a way to contain Florian's influence. The advisor bids farewell with wishes that the right choice be made, leaving the king alone with his thoughts. Alone in the opulence of the throne room, the emperor rants against the prime minister's petulance. A dark energy begins to emanate from his hands as he recovers his composure, comforting himself with the certainty that, because he holds a crucial secret under lock and key, Duke Florian will never have the power to disobey his orders. Back at the Florian residence, Juvelian yawns while reading a book. Meanwhile, Max takes advantage of the sofa to rest. Wait, didn't he want to leave there as quickly as possible? Juvelian observes him with a grumpy expression. Annoyed at seeing the young man occupying the very piece of furniture she considers her favorite spot to relax. Upon noticing her lingering gaze in his direction, Max asks what she is staring at so much. Juvelian just says she is seeing how comfortable he looks, though Max disagrees, which leaves her irritated. Juve falls silent, but begins to question herself mentally about when he intends to leave, and if he is going to insist on staying over until her father returns from his trip. Juvelian then mentions that Max seems to be quite close to her father, the Duke. Max replies by saying only that the relationship between the two is not bad. The answer and the young man's softer expression surprise the girl, reminding her that she still needs to deliver the cufflinks and the pendant she bought for Legis. Juvelian decides to take the opportunity to gather information about her father's tastes, since Max is his disciple. Faced with the girl's intent and thoughtful look, Max loses his patience and demands that she just say what she wants, as he hates wasting time. Plucking up her courage, she asks what he would think about the idea of gifting someone cufflinks. Max reacts immediately upon hearing the word gift. Juvelian turns red and begins to think about her father's reaction. Would he hate it, and why isn't Max saying anything? Max then pulls the book from her hands and away from her face, asking who she is talking about and who the gift is for. Juvelian stares at Max, surprised by his sudden approach. He was on the couch just a second ago. It seems curiosity hit him hard. The young woman replies that the answer is obvious, assuming he already knows who it is. However, Max is completely mistaken. He recalls the old court rumors, which claimed that the daughter of Duke Florian was madly in love with Sir Mikkel, to the point of ruining her own reputation to follow him. Judging that the girl intends to get back together with her ex-boyfriend, Max calls her a fool and asks if she is really going to give a gift to that despicable fellow. Juvelian suddenly stands up and fires back, saying he is going too far. Max gets even more irritated, thinking it's absurd for her to defend Mikkel while he is trying to help her, and snaps that insisting on someone who doesn't care about her shows a total lack of self-respect. Juvelian glares at him with a dark expression. Juvelian clenches her fists and clarifies that she is not chasing after anyone, but rather delivering the token because she wishes for them to get along, since the recipient is her own father. Upon realizing she was referring to Duke Florian, Max is left entirely speechless and even finds it funny, feeling relieved by the truth. Juvelian, confused by the reaction, asks what is wrong, and he tries to brush it off playfully. To the young woman's astonishment, Max begins to laugh nervously. Irritated, Juvelian demands that he stop laughing and just say what he's thinking. He changes the subject and asks if the cufflinks are indeed the chosen gift. When she confirms it and shows the box, Max downplays it, commenting that it's a useless gift for a master swordsman. Juvelian counters, asking if he happens to know how to choose better gifts. Max mentions that he recently gave something to his own father to cure his old age boredom, but refuses to give details when she curiously asks what it was. Max states with conviction that Duke Florian will love anything, as long as it comes from her. Juvelian reacts with total skepticism, sighing and thinking that if it were that easy, she wouldn't have asked for advice. She decides to deliver the token anyway, since the item has already been bought. Max observes her in silence, indignant that the young woman hasn't the slightest clue how much her father cares about her. He reflects on how much the master sacrifices for his daughter without her knowing a thing, finding that family dynamic a rather pitiful situation. The scene shifts to the military camp where Duke Legis Florian is stationed. He appears turning down a proposal, rigidly stating that his daughter is afraid of small animals. While the Duke observes the surroundings, one of his subordinates approaches, bringing correspondence and letting him know he has news directly from the family mansion, saying it is about Juvelian. The Duke quickly leaps from the tree to the ground. Legis reacts immediately and demands that the soldier speak up at once if anything happened to her. The subordinate clarifies that the young woman is fine, but reports that she has been showing a lot of anxiety and melancholy due to her father's prolonged absence. The information deeply moves the Duke, imagining his daughter missing him, something she never admitted verbally. Legis breaks his severe posture and displays a genuine smile of satisfaction, surprising the soldiers. The messenger adds that Juvelian is so downcast that she has barely left her quarters. Upon hearing this, Legis's gaze turns serious and focused again. He concludes that the situation has gone far enough and decides he no longer needs to extend his military charade because of Max. Determined to return home and support his daughter, the Duke orders his entourage to prepare to see the Emperor immediately. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Juvelian exerts herself in drafting a letter to accompany the gift she bought. Max watches her out of the corner of his eye and comments that the note is unnecessary, as the Duke would appreciate the gesture either way. Feeling the weight of the historical estrangement from her father, Juvelian confesses her frustration at not knowing what to write. She tries to get some help by asking Max what he and the master usually talk about on a daily basis. The question brings to Max's mind uncomfortable memories of Legis acting like an excessively proud father, bragging nonstop about how adorable Juvelian was as a baby, how she was already reading history books at age 5, and proudly displaying a flower brooch she had made. Uncomfortable with the memory of that endless chatter, Max changes the subject, claiming that they never talked much. Without the young man's assistance, Juvelian decides to solve the problem on her own and finishes the text with enthusiasm. Upon reading the final result, Max asks if she really plans to send the document that way. Juvelian defends her creation, explaining that the message is perfect because it admits her mistakes and asks for forgiveness. However, the text strictly resembles a formal and rigid apology letter. In it, Juvelian confesses to having taken Legiz's pendant during a task and justifies the delay in returning it due to inevitable circumstances, promising never to touch his belongings again and enclosing the cufflinks as a sign of sincerity. Ignoring Max's skepticism, she tells him to be careful in case someone shows up and leaves to drop off the package in her father's office, while the young man mentally anticipates the master's priceless reaction upon reading the note. In the imperial palace, the audience between the emperor and Legiz is marked by heavy tension. The monarch rants, demanding explanations for why the duke has brought no updates regarding the mastermind behind the attacks after 4 days of investigation. Legiz replies that he has not yet located the source of the problem. Knowing secretly that the assassination attempt was orchestrated by Max himself to stir up intrigue between the crown and the Floyans, Legiz observes the emperor's outburst with disdain, ironically noting that Max had been indirectly called a rat by his daughter. He remembers when Max questioned whether the duke fears the enemy's advances. Legiz assures him there is no reason for fear and explains that he hasn't counterattacked, yet only because it is not the right moment. He guarantees that the palace defenses have been reinforced and that new attacks will not occur while general attention is focused there. Although internally irritated by what he considers an excuse for the duke's incompetence, the monarch partially yields and demands that Legiz remain for a few more days to keep up appearances. The nobleman, however, sets a limit, guaranteeing his stay for only 1 more day. Legiz's imposing posture leaves the emperor furious after the nobleman's departure. He recalls the words of the prime minister, who told the monarch that the only way to contain Duke Floyan is by summoning the crown prince back to court. The emperor agrees and decides to use his son as a new tool for control. He plans to simulate a possible transfer of the throne to Maximilian, as long as the prince agrees to act as his pawn. It would be the ideal plan to put a brake on Legiz's actions. Back at the Floyan estate, Juvelian walks toward Legiz's office, deducing that her father will visit his workspace as soon as he returns. Upon entering the room, she is impressed by the organization of the space, but feels relief at not finding her father there, admitting that delivering the gift in person would be far too embarrassing. She approaches the desk, intending to just leave the box with the letter there and walk away. Before withdrawing, a specific document on the desk catches Juvelian's attention, a list of marriage suitors. Upon analyzing the aristocratic names selected by her father, she suffers a massive shock when she comes across the name of Maximilian Cashin ashed on the sheet. Juvelian panics instantly, letting the gift drop to the floor. She is gripped by terror because that name belongs to the terrible crown prince from the original story, the torturer. Trembling with frustration, she recalls a past conversation in which her father questioned her about what she looked for in a man, to which she categorically responded by demanding money, honor, family, beauty, and skills of the highest level. Juvelian panics upon considering that the duke took her answer completely literally. The man in question is Maximilian Cashin ashed. Although he does indeed possess lineage, power, and honor, Juvelian knows perfectly well that he is a maniacal tyrant who does not hesitate to shed blood to reach the throne, being one of the most cruel and relentless villains in the original story. A psychopath who, in the past, even tried to torture her. Juvelian feels betrayed and used merely to elevate the family's status with the royalty. Meanwhile, in an isolated area of the palace, Max relaxes on the sofa while waiting for Juvelian, but his calm is interrupted upon sensing something approaching. With a swift movement, he repositions himself, grabs a spy who is lurking in the shadows of the room, and asks what he is seeking there. The man desperately tries to stammer that he was sent by Madame just to deliver an urgent message. Max, recognizing the name, then lets him go. The informant, catching his breath, reports that the emperor's movements have been extremely suspicious. Max scoffs, stating that the monarch should indeed be busy trying to protect himself after the last gift he received. However, the spy reveals that the prime minister and several nobles are pressuring the court, causing the emperor to accelerate the preparations for the official return of the crown prince. Because after all, Max is actually Maximilian, the crown prince of the empire. Back to Juvelian, she tries to organize her thoughts to escape that matrimonial trap. Knowing she is dealing with the imperial family, she recognizes that she will need an impeccable excuse to avoid the meeting with the tyrant prince. Her best strategy will be to change the duke's mind, but with the caution not to let it show that she has already discovered his plans. She walks purposefully back to her room, ready to architect her plan. Upon opening the door and searching the quarters, Juvelian notices an unusual silence and notes the absence of her mysterious companion. She searches every corner, lifting sheets and looking behind furniture, wondering if he might have hidden due to the servant's approach, but finds a note on a counter there. Picking up the note, she notices the rough handwriting that brings a short warning. "Do not come looking for me. I will return when it is time." Finding the writing worse than a cat's scratch, Juvelian tries to feign indifference, grumbling that she never asked him to return anyway. However, the silence of the room hits her hard, bringing a sudden wave of melancholy. Hurt by his sudden departure, and by him not having the consideration to say goodbye in person, she puts the note away with a heavy heart. "I don't know, Juvelian. I think you might be falling a little in love." On his way to the capital, Maximilian rethinks the note he left in Juvelian's room. Questioning his own actions and the reason he even bothered to write it, he admits to himself that if she hadn't gone looking for him, he might have stayed there much longer, as if that room were his natural place in the world. Pulling the reins abruptly, he looks toward the horizon. He orders his men to take a shortcut, as there is a political urgency he must resolve immediately. At the Floyan mansion, Juvelian wakes up startled by the bright daylight, wondering why her father's mysterious student didn't wake her up. Upon reviewing the note, she remembers that he had already departed. Trying to push aside her worry over the young man's whereabouts, she focuses on her own urgent problems. She spent the night awake, brainstorming a strategy against the engagement, and ended up falling asleep without a single viable idea. To make matters worse, she stares at a mysterious pendant in her hands that also needs to be returned as soon as possible, feeling buried under pending tasks. The maids gossip with concern about their mistress's atypical behavior. Accustomed to walking freely around the residence, Juvelian now stays in her room, staring out the window with a vacant and sad gaze. The servants attribute this sadness to Duke Regis's prolonged absence. One of the maids approaches and suggests that the young woman take advantage of the sunny day to go for a stroll in the garden, receiving a timid agreement from the young lady, who realizes that staying inside is indeed leaving her suffocated. At that moment, the maid recalls the girl's childhood, when she would cry loudly saying she hated being home alone due to her father's constant absence. Remembering that the young lady has always detested loneliness despite her recent sharp posture, she grabs the girl and pulls her into a hug, promising she will never leave her side, leaving the young woman completely confused and embarrassed. Once outside, the maid serves some tea for the young lady. But she quickly notices that the girl's favorite strawberry cake is missing and runs desperately back to the kitchen. Relieved to finally have a moment of privacy, the princess focuses on her two critical missions before her father's return: solving the mystery of the pendant and sabotaging the list of suitors. Lost in thought about how to deal with the imperial court, she hears someone approaching. Her father. Upon turning around, she falls into complete shock as she comes face to face with Duke Regis. Panicking because she thought his trip would take months, she stammers an awkward greeting while trying to process the information. Remembering that the butler, Derek, had guaranteed the Duke would take a long time to return, she mentally curses the employee while trying to offer her father a bath or a joint lunch, regretting the proposal the very next instant. Interrupting his daughter's nervous rambling, Duke Regis takes a step forward with a deeply serious look. He declares that, from that exact moment on, he will never allow her to be alone again. Shocked by the sudden and affectionate declaration from a father who had always been cold and distant, Juvelian loses her words, completely disarmed by the Duke's drastic change in attitude. While Juvelian wonders what on earth her father is doing, the Duke reveals that he rushed straight from the palace, which is why he has not eaten yet, questioning if his daughter has had dinner. Given Juvelian's negative response, he seriously warns her to take care of herself, pointing out that she will faint again if she keeps skipping meals. Juvelian's mind immediately distorts the advice. She concludes that her father wants her to remain healthy only so she can be sold off and married to the crown prince without any major issues. The Duke, with plenty of gentleness, elegantly holds his daughter's hand, guiding her so they can go have dinner. As they walk toward the dinner table, Juvelian feels a touch on her hand. To her complete astonishment, Duke Regis is holding her hand firmly and affectionately. Initially touched, the young woman quickly represses the feeling, thinking herself stupid for expecting real kindness from him. She recalls that, in the past, she would do anything to follow him and beg for his love, but now she understands that trying to win her father's affection is totally meaningless. The atmosphere during dinner is suffocating and uncomfortable for the young woman. Breaking the ice, the Duke mentions having heard that she will attend a party next week, the birthday of Rosemary, daughter of Count Arlo. Fearing that her father will use the lack of an escort as a pretext to push the crown prince onto her, Juvelian quickly lies. She claims, feigning enthusiasm, that she has received letters from absolutely incredible and wonderful suitors, and that it is being difficult to choose just one given so many perfect options. The Duke merely listens and consents in silence. She then begins eating faster so she can go up to her room right away. Marilyn surprises Juvelian with a stack of letters. The maid explains that she selected only the best options, highlighting the renowned imperial knight Sir Boromir, known for his swordsmanship and manners, Sir Edmund, the handsome and perceptive son of Count Rowan, and Serenade, son of Marquis Crocus, and a candidate for Minister of Foreign Affairs. Surprised by the high level of the candidates, she thinks about whom she can choose, taking into account her father's reputation. Juvelian says it is already late, so she asks Marilyn to send the reply the following morning. Upon leaving the room, Marilyn runs into the Duke in the corridors, who is gathering information. The maid reveals that the young lady chose Sir Edmund, son of Count Rowan, to be her partner at the party. When questioned by the Duke about the young man's reputation, Marilyn gets excited, melting into praises over the young noble's stunning beauty and commenting on how fabulous and artistic the two of them will look together. By the time Marilyn realizes it, the Duke had already vanished from the spot. That very same night, Count Rowan's residence is gripped by terror. Sir Edmund trembles from head to toe upon coming face to face with the fearsome Duke Regis on his property in the middle of the night, wondering what Regis is doing there. While Edmund tries to stammer a greeting, the Duke glares at the man's necklace with a terrifying expression, making Edmund shake with dread. The Duke continues to look the man up and down while mentally replaying the demands Juvelian had made about an ideal partner: money, honor, family, appearance, and extraordinary skills. He then sets his teacup on the table and calls the young man's name, stating in no uncertain terms that he is disqualified. Man, I actually felt bad for the guy, poor thing. The next morning, the atmosphere at the Floyan mansion is much lighter. One of the maids runs into Juvelian's quarters to deliver the package coming directly from the famous Feodora workshop. Relieved to know the item arrived in time for Rose's birthday, Juvelian examines the boxes and is surprised to find an extra piece with a note reading, "For my muse." Wondering if it might be some buy one, get one free promotion, she laughs upon seeing the maid's fascination with the novelty, crediting the success to Ian's talent and promising to teach the servants how to use the object soon. The light-hearted moment is interrupted when the butler, Derek, knocks on the door to announce an unexpected visitor. Sir Ramin is in the lobby and insists on personally delivering the response to the letter sent by Juvelian. Finding the gesture thoughtful, she ponders that it would be a great opportunity to get closer to her future dance partner. As she comes down the stairs, she is elegantly received by the young man. Although he is not as stunning as Mikkel, he still lives up to his reputation as an attractive man. During the conversation, she ends up thinking about Max again, wondering if the young man is eating properly. She shakes her head to regain her focus, just as Sir Ramin asks for permission to explain the real reason for his visit. To Juvelian's complete surprise, Edmund abruptly drops to his knees and begs for forgiveness. Trembling, he invents a desperate excuse, claiming he thought she already had a partner, and because of that, ended up accepting another lady's invitation. Faced with the young woman's confusion, the nobleman reveals that high society is rife with rumors that Juvelian is secretly dating. Panicking internally at the possibility of someone having seen her father's student climbing through her window, she maintains her composure and counters by saying she spent all this time recovering at home with witnesses. Feigning indifference, she accepts the apologies and says she will simply look for another partner. Juvelian's benevolent reaction makes Edmund look at her as if she were an angel of purity. Moved, he stammers that if he didn't know, he was disqualified. Remembering the terrible threat made by Duke Regis the previous night, he would court her to the ends of the earth. He is so grateful that he even invites her out for dinner. He would absolutely love that. Although Juvelian finds the young man's attitude quite strange, Edmund ends up noticing a certain reflection right ahead. The Duke. He does not look happy at all. Oh, good heavens. Sensing mortal danger in the air, Edmund falls into complete panic, apologizes, and runs away from the mansion, leaving Juvelian completely clueless about that bizarre behavior. The scene shifts to the exquisite Bloom's Hall, where a group of nobles gossips maliciously about the preparations for Count Arlo's ball. Quickly, the main topic becomes Juvelian. The ladies spew venom and mock the young woman's dating rumors, insinuating amid giggles that she must be going out with someone so shameful and inferior that she can't even show him in public. The loud mockery is interrupted by the violent sound of a wine glass shattering against the floor, catching everyone's attention there. The mysterious figure glares at the gossips with deep indignation, questioning if spreading lies like that made them satisfied. One of the noblewomen tries to defend herself arrogantly, claiming that Juvelian's past behavior justified the existence of such rumors. The defender firmly fires back, asking if they had by any chance seen any of those rumors with their own eyes. Stammering, the girl tries to explain that she doesn't need to see it for herself, since Juvelian's past already speaks for itself. The young man then asks if they would have the courage to say that right in front of Juvelian herself. The girls fall silent instantly and turn away, embarrassed. The young man grumbles irritably to himself against the falseness of the nobility. Feeling deeply uncomfortable and furious at the injustice dealt to Juvelian, he still wonders why he feels this way specifically about her. Gee, wonder why, right guys, he's totally whipped. The man then tries to relax in a secluded corner. He enters a private room of an information guild where he complains that the place is garbage. The madame counters, saying that the quality of the establishment has never changed. Curious, the woman questions whether the news regarding Lady Floyan was not to the prince's liking. Maximilian snaps back dryly, asking if cheap slander is now considered quality information, making his discomfort clear ever since he returned from Duke Floyan's residence. Demanding only the actual facts, Maximilian discovers that the rumor about Juvelian's love affair is completely false. Oh, you don't say. The madame reveals that the young woman had sent a letter to Sir Edmund Rowan, inviting him to be her partner at the ball. She points out that Edmund has a reputation for breaking hearts and being unfaithful, adding that, by luck or misfortune, the young man rejected Miss Floyan's invitation. The revelation makes the crown prince burn with fury, clenching his fists, enraged by the fact that a mere count's son would dare to reject Juvelian. The informant proceeds with the report and reveals that the source of the rumors about the young woman's nightly encounters is Sir Radian Droyle, cousin to Mikkel Hessen, Juvelian's former boyfriend. Maximilian finds it deplorable that Mikkel would sit idly by while his own cousin destroys his ex-girlfriend's honor. The prince orders the gathering of any dirt that can serve as a weapon against the Hessen and Droyle families, as well as an investigation into all the other nobles who sent letters to Juvelian. After the prince's departure, the guild master comments that Duke Floyan had already bought the exact same information earlier, predicting dark times ahead for the slanderers. At the Floyan mansion, Juvelian finds herself trapped in a forced tea session with her father, right after Sir Ramin's abrupt departure. When Duke Regis asks if she has managed to find a partner for the ball yet, the young woman, fearing he will bring up the engagement plans with the prince if he learns of the rejection, lies, saying she is still evaluating her options. The Duke sets down his cup and enigmatically warns that if she cannot find anyone, she must inform him immediately, leaving his daughter terrified of what he might plot. Sensing the tense and suffocating atmosphere, Juvelian asks to be excused. Duke Regis announces that he will also head out to settle some pending matters and finish giving a warning to those involved, promising to return for dinner. As her father walks away, the young woman feels pity for whoever the target of that threat might be, without imagining that it concerns the nobles who insulted her. The moment the Duke leaves the property, a familiar silhouette appears among the mansion's branches. Leaping silently toward Juvelian's bedroom window, her father's mysterious student returns in the shadows, wondering if she will be in her quarters. Well, we've reached the end of the chapters. For now. And there, do you want the continuation? So leave a like and a comment with a cookie. Until next time, my dears.